So, if everybody who's watching in the audience, if you could just mute yourselves, that would be appreciated. Thank you very much. So good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. I'm your host, Carol, as you know, and we have Selvi, Soraya, Reverend Tenzin, Kamani, and Fazana. So today's subject, again, it's COVID-19. Is it an agent for transformation? And how serious is it? So I was looking through some stuff that the UN had reported, because sorry, there's some feedback. If people can please mute themselves, that would be appreciated. Yeah, so, you know, nature is sending us a message, guys, with the coronavirus pandemic and the ongoing climate crisis. And according to the UN's environment chief, humanity is placing too many pressures on the natural world and with damaging consequences. And he had warned that failing to take care of the planet meant not taking care of ourselves. And leading scientists say this is a clear warning shot, given that far more deadly diseases exist in wildlife, and that today civilization is playing with fire, right? So hang on, folks. You know, there's some noise today from all over, and this is a serious subject, so we really need to talk about it. So basically, what we are thinking is, if wildlife, if we cut down all our trees and destroy all our forests, almost always human behavior causes the diseases to spill over, because, you know, when you cut down the trees, when you cut down the forests, animals come closer to people. You know, COVID, what did they call it? Coronavirus, right? Coronavirus exists in animals and it has existed for centuries. So the crossover, how does the crossover happen? I think suddenly we have lost touch of how COVID came into being and how this crossed over. Well, the way it crossed over is that these far more deadly diseases that exist in wildlife has crossed over because civilization is playing with fire. And so to prevent further outbreaks, these experts say that both global heating and destruction on natural world for farming and mining and housing have to end, as both drive wildlife into contact with people. They also urge to put an end to what they call the ideal mixing bowl for disease, the illegal global animal trade. So our long-term response must be to tackle habitat and biodiversity loss. In Sri Lanka, as you all know, just a few days ago, cabinet decided to hand over state forests for the purpose of farming or chain farming or whatever. And this is, we are talking about 600,000 hectares. So, you know, there's so much that is at stake. And this discussion about transformation today is more important than ever. And without too much, waste of time, I'm going to hand you over to Selvi, because as you know, Selvi always stages the set, and she says, so awakening our higher conscience and global, the global scene post-COVID. Selvi, over to you.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you for reminding us and bring the subject of the nature's degradation into focus today, because that's a very important point. Now, it is believed that the fundamental transformation of the world we live in is happening, rebirthing the humankind in a new spiritual level. A new spiritual level in which we become better human beings, having greater awakened consciousness, a greater awakened awareness about the planet, the people, and where we live with in the home as well. Now, some believe that COVID virus is one of the important agents of this transformation. Let's look at it. If we take the presidential election of 2020, the turnout in the 2020 presidential election has hit the 50-year high, exceeding the record set by 2008 presidential election of Barack Obama. More than 62% of the eligible voting population had voted. It shows a swell of civic participation. This civic participation may or may not be the direct consequence of COVID, but it is certainly an outcome of a greater awakened sense of responsibility among the voters towards the future of their country. Again, if we look at the Black Lives Matter movement, it is their awakened sense of responsibility towards their fellow Black Americans. Now, greater awakened sense of responsibility and awareness towards the planet and fellow humans is indicative of raised levels of spirituality. Could this be the impact that COVID-19 brought about in the USA and probably in the whole world? Let's look at it. As of today, 51.4 million people were globally affected by COVID. Out of these numbers, 1.3 million have already died, sadly. Approximately 2.5%, that is. In America alone, 10.2 million people having COVID positive now, and India 8.5 million. By its scale and pervasiveness, it has required the status of a pandemic and has warranted impositions of lockdowns, isolations, quarantines, and curfews in most countries. As we all know, the airports are closed, planes are grounded, commercial and retail establishments have ground to a halt, manufacturing industry has been stumped, and tourism has disappeared. The economic engine and the growth have slowed down. The second wave of COVID has dealt a death blow on our economic system, which was already slowing down. Now, this can be termed as a global crisis. But if you look at some of the latest issues of The Economist, one could see a debate on the need to change the current model on which the economics has been structured in our world. They are discussing a complete overhaul of the system. When COVID hit the planet, the economic system was in full swing. The entire global population was riveted to it in more than one way. First as producing the growth, and second as consumers of the products. They had no time for their families, for themselves or others. It was a mad rush. Although they came to realize the futility of that rat race, there was no way to stop because the engine was running and they were on it. Although they knew how the economic growth was degrading the planet, they could not stop it because the engine was driverless and it was in full throttle. Nor could they get away from compulsive buying, compulsive traveling, compulsive eating because of the pressures of the advertisements and need to do what other people were doing. It was a vicious cycle. The engine slowing down and coming to a halt has given a breather space to people to get off the engine and ask some fundamental questions. Do I want to be in this role in this economic growth? How has the system affected my relationships with my family and others? How has it affected my health and the health of my family? Are we getting the right kind of education for individual enhancement? There are comforts and conveniences like ever before, but is the quality of life better than our parents and grandparents? Is there equality, freedom, and fairness in the system? COVID has given us the opportunity to ask these questions. It has lifted us out of the rat race and given us the space and time to be reflective in life. It has given us the time to become inward looking. It has severed us from the outside world by isolation and quarantine and minimized our desires and made full of consumerism irrelevant. This is the opportunity, the possibility that COVID offers us through this crisis. Like every cloud has a silver lining, every crisis has an opportunity. What COVID has made us do, this in effect is the essence of spiritual practice laid out in the science of yoga. Raising levels of spirituality, yoga identifies freedom from survival mode, not being in the rat race, requires you to immerse yourself in self-reflection, wants you to be inward-looking rather than outward-looking, critically question existential norms we have taken for granted, and finally, freedom from desire or pull of consumerism. We have to acknowledge that the downsides as well in this COVID crisis. Sure, it's affecting livelihoods, it is impacting on women and children, and let us look at the opportunity COVID is offering and adopt behavioral changes so that we can come out of this crisis together as much better human beings. Before I finish, I'd like to give you two examples. One of my friends who has been termed as a high-level consumerist, sort of a stockbroker type, taking weekends, every weekend he goes out with his family for holidays and outings, said he has learned to find the same fun in his own back garden, in his house, consume less and be satisfied with what they have. And we are happy. Surprisingly, we are happy, he said. Another much poorer builder said, we were able to spend quality time with my family, cooking new recipes and playing and relaxing. When questioned about income, he said, since we were not going out, there was less to spend, so we were able to manage with less. Each one of us, let us see how we could use COVID in such a way that we can come out of this crisis as much better human beings than we were before COVID. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you very much, Selvi. That's very profound. Reminded me of a time when my mom would, I would stand in front of my closets and say, what shall I wear? And she said, if you had less clothes, you'd know what to wear. So you really don't need so many clothes, one of my mummyisms that I always try to add on here. Yeah, guys, you have any questions for Selvi? Soraya?
Yes, well, Selvi, I mean, what really tore me apart this morning listening to you was the impact of COVID on women and girls. I was reading a newspaper article yesterday that how COVID has impacted sex workers and how a woman who had just stepped outside to get some food and her 5-year-old daughter was raped in Mumbai. And horrific stories. And you spoke clearly to our personal transformation. And I want to allude a little to the community transformation, because this is our challenge. This, what happens to one affects us all. So when Carol calls on me, I will talk a little about that. But thank you for raising and bringing awareness to the issue of COVID and the impact on women and girls.
So, Selvi, what you said, I think there are a lot of human beings, average people like you and I, we deal with, all of us here on this panel, and people who actually tune on to our show, I know lots of them are actually transforming themselves. We are questioning ourselves as well, right? As I said to you all earlier, I'm wondering sometimes, is it me who needs, who's going mad? Because I cannot believe that some of the world is not seeing this as a time for change and a time for transformation, if we are seeing it as that, right? So you begin to question yourself, wondering, who's in the right here? Anyway, so we will discuss more as we go on. And now we shall move on to Soraya, who will talk about the psychological fear factor and how the community response is to COVID. Over to you, Soraya.
Thank you, Carol. I think Sylvie spoke beautifully about awakening, and I believe that every awakening needs action. We can't just be awakened and watch when our communities are torn apart, when our women, when our children are going through so much. So fear is debilitating. In the West, we say fear is false evidence appearing real, FEAR. So what happens is that when fear comes to us, until and unless we look at fear with courage and confidence, look at the very existence of fear in its eye, I don't think we will be able to face fear effectively. And this is why um, uh, they also say, of all the liars in the world, sometimes the worst are our own fears. So for our ability in this moment of transformation to ask ourselves whether our fears are well grounded, whether they are merit our concerns, and how can we come together, not alone. This transformational work cannot happen alone. How can we come together within our community to transform our society? Because as I said, and I feel again and again, when I was little, my father said, do not ever put somebody down, because it's a very difficult place. You have to be pushing that person down. Look down only if you have to lift somebody up. So this is a powerful opportunity for us to really look, not do the same thing and expect the same result and wait for change. I think as Sri Lankans, what is it that calls you? What begs your attention? Last week, we spoke about being a beautiful potted plant. COVID has woken us. Life has become uncertain. Tomorrow, it could be a family member, a good friend who could be a victim of COVID. So there is this urgency we have to understand. And I want, and on behalf of Wisdom Wednesdays, our goal here is to mobilize you to action and bring about national unity. This is critical for the health of our country and for the well-being of our citizens. So we want you to do something moving forward, not to be debilitated by fear, but be encouraged by hope and be awakened. So, and now don't forget that transformation is one step away from a decision you take, one step away from an action you can take. So the life presents us wonderful opportunities every day to do something little. um, Mother Teresa said, do not feed 100 people, feed just one person. And that is where this transformation begins. So all of us need to really step up and step in to our roles as citizens, as humans. And in Sri Lanka, what I think we should do is we should set the stage and for call for community service, um, from everybody. From everybody, there should be an urgent, strong, a powerful call by the government, which every citizen should answer. Oftentimes we see religious people come together, they do community work, and there are civil organizations. This is not sufficient in this COVID, post-COVID, or COVID, it's not post yet. We have to make that clarion call for community service. Every one of us, we can do something. And the Bible said, blessed are the peacemakers, not the conflict creators. So in foundational to what we do should be our ability to bring about peace and harmony in our country. And in the absence, I'm very sorry to say this, in the absence of a very strong national policy towards unity and celebrating diversity and pluralism, our country is politically polarized. Our country is religiously polarized. And we citizens must take cognizance, must be aware of this and do everything we can possibly to unite our community, to bring about a better and a more harmonious Sri Lanka. And what about us as individuals? What do we do? I don't know. In the United States, the Democrats don't talk with the Republicans don't talk with the Democrats. We are polarized. We are in our own silos, trying to think the other person is wrong. The Democrats, the conservatives feel the Democrats are not religious. They don't care about religion, which is furthest from the truth. As Democrats, we might not talk about religion, but we care about religion and we live a religious life. So these kind of barriers need to be broken. I set the alarm. I hope I'm not going over. People have to get together, and we have to hold our media accountable, because media is weaponizing every little issue into a big thing that cannot be cured, and that is fatal. So we must, I think my time must be up. Yeah, 5 seconds. We must build common ground. There is no choice. We have to build common ground. And let's talk more. Thank you.
So, Soraya, I was just thinking, about what you said. I think it's easier to transform people one by one. How do we transform governments to get out of this polarization that they do? And I'm not just talking about Sri Lanka. I'm talking about worldwide. I think it's a tool of politicians to polarize the people. And then the people forget, for instance, in Buddhism, it's all about Lord Buddha. Buddha wanted people to get along and to love each other. That's what Jesus Christ said, love one another, right? And we say we are one religion or the other, we follow one path or the other. But in reality, what we are following is the politicians and what they have to say. And even in the US of A, as you know, a lot of the right wing or the Republican right wing, those in the Republican Party that are right wing, they think they are very religious, right? They are religious to the point of fanaticism. But what are they fighting about? This main thing that the preachers preach is about the anti-abortion issue or the woman's right to choose. I think that is the driving factor for them to vote whichever way they vote, because they that's driving, and they think that is being religious, that is being Christian. But what about the rest of them that come along?
Right.
So you can't take. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, that's exactly the problem here, Carol. We have this set of values and we believe, we think the other person doesn't have it. So we are in our own silos. I took a course at the Leadership Institute. It's a very conservative university on how to run for office. And there are 7 values that Democrats and the Republicans have in common. But only 3 of them are more important to the Democrats, and the 7 are more important to the conservatives. So this is a value-based division that is propped up, and we fall into this trap. But if we get to know one another, and if we can understand what are these values, your values are my values as well. Just because you say abortion is okay, nobody's screaming saying that go for an abortion, so there is this misconception which I think can only be challenged and broken down if we get to know one another. Dialogue, communication.
Yeah.
And then as you said, Carol, politicians thrive on the polarization. That is votes for them. So if you look at Sri Lanka and everywhere, this is the same challenge we have in all countries in the world today.
Yeah, I think it's almost sinful. What's happening is almost sinful, right?
Yeah. Soraya, I have
to say something?
Question. Yes. First of all, I'd like to say, the politicians, how they act and how they act towards polarizing the peoples in their countries is all in order to manipulate the economic engine. So since the engine is now coming to a halt, I have a lot of faith that the politicians also have to change the way they're dealing with politics.
Correct.
I think this is going to be the case. But a question for you, Soraya, is there a role for moral compass in this post-COVID era?
A moral compass for the politicians?
No, for people in general and specifically for the politicians.
That moral compass, I think, will begin with engagement, Selvi. I think we have been told we are powerless. Only the politician and the priest can bring about change, which is not true. So I think the moral compass begins with taking personal responsibility and building community, not just thinking that I can change the world. Of course, you can begin the work, but if we are going to be successful, we have to have community.
Sorry. Thank you so Yeah, so, you know, as we all know, Selvi spoke about this, Soraya spoke about this, there's an economic recession worldwide. And we all understand who it hits the most. It hits the women and children, because when there's no money in the house, the violence steps in. I think I'm going to hand over to Kamini to talk more on this subject. Over to you, Kamini.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the wisdom and guidance, tips given by all of you before. Such strong and important words. And something that I just remembered is there's this beautiful book I'm reading on Buddhism. And it talks about how do we cherish others, and which is one of the key aspects of Buddhism, no? About giving compassion to others. And it's about constantly reminding ourselves that everyone wants to be happy. But how people look towards being happy is what the challenge is. And also another thing is about remembering that everyone has the Buddha nature, the pure soul within them, everyone, however violent or whatever they may be. So I guess in a way, trying to also review how we look at people, the world, it's tough. Work in progress. Even for me, I'm working very hard on it, but it's really helped me change how I look at people in the midst of crisis. So I just wanted to add that point. But getting into what I was meant to speak about, as stated before, Sri Lanka and the world has entered the second wave of COVID, and this is just when economies, countries were beginning to stand up and stand on their feet. And for the South Asian region, there are estimates from large organizations, including the World Bank, that we are going to go into the worst ever recession in time to come. It still hasn't hit us yet. And the highest toll will be on informal workers. That would be the daily wage earners, the people who work from home, those who are not in the formal or structured work environment. And within the South Asian region, it's estimated to hit especially the hospitality, retail, trade, and transport sectors. And I would say in Sri Lanka, including tourism. And as stated before, women are disproportionately impacted. I've seen some interesting reports also coming out this week in local papers. Shihara Madhuage, she wrote a fantastic one in the Financial Times, quoting how women are going to be disproportionately impacted, also because more women are in the insecure job markets. And we saw what happened in the apparel industry. Anyways, even before what happened at Brandix, the apparel industry was being hit, and that is predominantly women who are in that industry. So then going on to violence against women and violence against children, we know that there have been huge increases of violence against women and girls across the globe. BBC has reported 20% increase in domestic violence. Anyways, within Sri Lanka also we have noted the increase of cases. And also there's a connection between violence against, domestic violence and violence against children within the home, and having to be in the same place with a perpetrator and not being able to seek out services. And also there have been increases in violence toward lesbian and bisexual women within their homes due to the pandemic. And also if you look at it from a mental health perspective, you're seeing how much confusion there is. Also there's lack of direction, I must say, uncertainty about what's going to happen next. And if you look at children, they're constantly in this place of worry and not engaging with people they would usually engage with. That is why in Europe, for example, they're looking to keep primary schools open. And also in Sri Lanka, you're seeing families being taken away for quarantine. And just imagine a child who keeps seeing this. And we know that terrible story of that child, the disabled child who committed suicide when his caregivers were taken away from him. And just imagine that level of, mental status to make that kind of decision. So what has been happening at a programming level? Organizations are giving funds or doing things, say, for example, giving income support packages, increasing online access to online services around domestic violence, child abuse, And also, in the bright side, some people are predicting, specifically the World Bank, that there can be an increase in tech services due to people having to be innovative. But what does it mean for us as individuals? And because it is going to get tougher, we haven't seen the best of it yet, or the worst of it. So just looking at it from also the spiritual perspective and within ourselves, we spoke of fear. And as we know, as human beings, also when we're in this place of constant fear, panic, it also creates a soul sickness. It reduces our own immunity, and you're terrified about what's going to happen to yourself and to people you love. And what can we do? Either you give in to the fear, or you could also turn towards compassion. And firstly, I would say compassion towards yourself, being kind to yourself, allowing yourself to feel fear, but also then to looking at how you can move forward. And I would highly recommend processes of meditation, yoga, taking breaks, connecting more with your friends and with people, because as Selvi was saying, the rat race has been crazy. We know that a lot of children in Sri Lanka cannot access online learning. If you have, for example, laptops that you can give away or tablets, please do that with connections, Wi-Fi connections, so that children could learn. And so therein comes the aspect of caring for others, because we are going to have to stretch ourselves further in this pandemic, in this second wave, and maybe perhaps a third wave, who knows. And also really focus on children, because they are the next generation, and this is a really unusual situation that they're exposed to. So, I mean, even before the pandemic at Shantimargam, we knew the numbers of children feeling isolated, alone, because their parents are not around. And now is an opportunity for parents to reach out to their children, speak to them, listen to them, and listen to each other, actually. And I also wanted to talk about a few examples of people that I've been following. For example, I have a friend of mine in the tourism industry, has this fantastic place in Kalpitia, and really hit by what's happening. But he's tried so hard through his savings and everything to keep the staff on, keep going. He keeps going with the community initiatives. He's been raising funds, using innovation to raise funds for his organization. In Vienna, there's this fantastic Sri Lankan restaurant that I patronize, and the lady who owns it, like, even though they're finding it so difficult, whenever there was food that I liked, she would call me and she would send it across to me. She tries to give me extra food, and I'm just amazed by her big heart. And this is what we talk about Sri Lankans. We are we're the second most altruistic country in the world, as reported a few years ago. And even my own personal life, I mean, my mother fell ill a few months ago, and I felt so frustrated that I couldn't come across and I couldn't do much. But one of my friends stepped in and she was like, Kamini, do not worry about this. I've got it. And she did. She went home, checked in with my mother, took a doctor, took a therapist, and really helped out in ways that positively impacted all of us, myself, my mother, my sister. And it's just amazing. And this is how people are overextending themselves in the face of this pandemic. So in a nutshell, I mean, I think, how can we change? How can we shift? Loving and being loved, having a purpose in your life and giving love, increasing your self-esteem. And I'm taking this from some of the things that Deepak Chopra has also said, and things that I'm also seeing. Tapping into your inner peace and joy. It is so crucial now, and being of service to others and generosity of spirit. Some key areas that we can work on. And also, again, I've been talking about these books I'm reading, and if it comes to helping people in Tibetan Buddhism, I read up on how there's a belief that the Buddha could be within poor people who need help, or even animals who need help, and therefore help every being that you see, because it could be the Buddha. And you can accumulate merit, but regardless of any merit that you can accumulate, I think you should just help. And this is going to be the time we push ourselves forward. So what can we do? Perhaps reflect on things we've been saying and maybe write down simple 2 or 3 acts that you can do, how you can overextend yourself a bit to help others. as well as yourself. And I wanted to end with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamini. Yeah, go ahead.
Kamini, coming from the corporate world where I was doing a really busy job and a mom of young twins, I used to always complain I don't have enough time to spend with the kids. Hence, I took early retirement, and now I think I have a balanced life. So, like you said, this is a right opportunity to twist this period around and find more time with your children and family instead of being negative and complaining and saying, "Oh, what do I do now? When do I start work?" I'm in lockdown. It's heartening to see some people really twisting this around and spending more time with their children, doing activities in the house, doing up their garden together, and spending time as a family together, which I think is the way to go, right? To stretch this period and be positive.
And I was
Absolutely.
wondering very quickly, Kamini, I think in Sri Lanka, we have about 16 million rural population with hardly any hope for tomorrow, struggling to find something to eat today. What can we do for them? What do we tell them when they can only think of their next meal?
I think Sri Lanka has shown it over and over again. Say when we've had floods, when we've had all kinds of calamities, Sri Lankans have gotten together, regardless of the government encouraging it, to just donate and to give. And I think, the help is at the end of our own hands, and I think all of you know this. And it can change another person's life, and it will change yours as well. And I think it's as much as possible just trying to give.
And the people who have being a little bit more giving, little bit more conscious, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It may also mean that you will have to cut down on your lifestyle, certain things, certain ways of life. And well, hey, we're all in this together, right?
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kamini. And in the meantime, let's move on to Fazana. Fazana would talk about how behavioral changes are absolutely imminent. I mean, if we are going to write this out, if we are going to survive this, then we have to change behavior. Ourselves first, of course. We can't look at the neighbor and say, that person has to change. We have to change to start with. So, Fazi, you want to talk to them about how to help ourselves and others in this regard?
Yeah, Carol, I think I was focusing more on MSMEs, how we can help small and medium-scale businesses during the pandemic. That's the aspect I was coming on, because I think Selvi touched a bit on behavior as well, on the more inward-looking areas. So I will move to talking more on how small and medium enterprises, how they can survive in this pandemic period, which kind of overlays some of the areas that Kamini spoke about with the women in this segment being affected. So just to give you a macro view, small and medium scale enterprises play a vital role in the socio-economic development of Sri Lanka. If you take the GDP of Sri Lanka last year, it was over 87 billion US dollars, and the MSME sector contributed 52%, more than half. So it is the backbone of the economy. So in Sri Lanka, MSMEs account for 90% of the total enterprises in the non-agricultural sector and 45% of the total employment. So as Kamini also said, of this 45, majority would be as women as well. So if you look at the number, in terms of numbers, we have over 1 million SMEs and providing livelihood to over 2.2 million of the population. So SMEs are the ones who are mostly being hit, most vulnerable, most affected, first with natural disasters that took place, with the floods and landslides in 2016-17, then with the Easter attacks last year, and while they were recovering, we had COVID. So the first casualties of a recession, of any economic shock, and the hardest hit are the SMEs. Further, the psychological trauma associated with the pandemic, which could have long-lasting emotional effects, are unprecedented. So with all these disasters coming in, plus, in a tropical climate like this, for us to be wearing masks and gloves under humid conditions, which is again, Carol, a behavioral change that people have to adapt to, and social distancing, which also leads to demoralizing and reducing their efficiency. So, because most people are not accustomed to this kind of lifestyle. So, if you look at the problems SMEs would have, one thing is mainly the credit. So, if you look at that, even access to bank credit is a challenge to SMEs all over the world, because when they do have access, they have to borrow at a premium, because, or borrow from the informal sector, because they wouldn't have all the balance sheets and accounts to show. So they'll be paying like exorbitant amounts. So again, with limited access to finance, as one of the chairmen of the SORAYA Development Bank quoted, quote unquote, unfortunately, what we have now is a perfect storm due to the recession caused by the coronavirus pandemic, threatening to blow the roof off the SME sector. So this is the tough part, where we're talking about 52% of the GDP being affected. So world over, Carrie, like you rightly said, most, if you look at global research, most people interviewed are not happy with some of the government's measures and concessionary offers that all the governments have given. Most of them, 1 in 3 respondents were unsure about the effectiveness of the economic stimuli packages offered by the governments around the world. So you can see that the role the government also has to play is much more in supporting this sector. So actually, the UK-based accounting firm ACCA recommends the 3 A's of crisis planning for any crisis. That is, one is to act, to respond in a sustainable manner, the A for act, analyze different information sources in your organization, and the other is to anticipate, to act, analyze, and anticipate in order to face the crisis moving forward. Because I feel, honestly, this would go on for another 2 years and will continue further unless a vaccine is developed. So it will take about 2 years for a full recovery. That is being very optimistic. And within that, we should also have a vaccine. So if you go further, let's look at what the SMEs can do. And here I think all that my fellow colleagues spoke about earlier come into play, the inward looking, the more mindfulness, more looking at yourself and your employees and looking at it with empathy. So if we look at one of the key steps, I would say is to engage your employees. So you have micro, which is less than 10 employees, medium, and so on. You have the categorization. However much employees you have, please engage them. The SME owners need to, first of all, stay calm. Not easy, but they need to find methodologies, as Selvi and Kamani suggested, to meditate or yoga and find an outlet to stay calm, and then engage your employees to brainstorm, to find new ideas, new possible strategies, give a platform to provide feedback, and look at how to navigate their business during these times. Some of the best ideas come from internal employees, and we all know that. And so employees also will be naturally more committed, right? Because they want to sustain their income and their jobs. So one key method is to engage your employees more and more. Don't get stressed and shut yourself and think, oh my God, the world is ending, and shut the employees away. So encourage innovative and creative thinking and think out of the box to overcome this. The other is to, again, work with your employees, of course, and re-evaluate your business model. We have seen so many heartening examples in this during this COVID times as well, where businesses have changed their business model, moved to e-platforms, and so on. The third is financial management of the organization. They need to look at a bit more if they want to get help from outside as well, and look at their finances, see are they borrowing at high rates, as I mentioned before, look at their cash flow, look at options, because finance becomes a key issue during the COVID for SMEs. support your customers. I loved your example, Kamani, where you spoke about the Sri Lankan restaurant, and I was thinking, oh my God, Kamani is given the perfect example for what I'm going to speak on. See how she engaged you when she makes something special. She called you and said, do you want this? So this is exactly what I mean by staying close to your customers. Look at your customers, look at your regular customers, go out of your way to engage them so that you'll have a lasting sort of partnership with them, and they will always come to you. I mean, as I mentioned in a previous talk, I still shop down my road for most of my stuff, and they have also engaged me. They would call and tell me if a product I was looking for wasn't there and has been brought back. And give that leadership. The fifth point is give that leadership with a renewed purpose. Head all guns, drive all guns, and move on. Navigate through this and give the leadership to your organization and to your employees to survive this. So, although there were many adverse effects due to COVID, as I mentioned, new opportunities have also come about, and governments are also encouraging for families to do home gardening, to grow agriculture on abandoned land. So these are all options that are coming in. A lot of herbal products, homemade products have come into the market. So I feel that, this is the way to go, to have a positive thinking and wait for a new opportunity to start. And I wish all the SMEs out there all the best, and, encourage them to keep going. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Fazana. A minuscule virus, one we cannot even see, is doing what religious leaders and monks and priests have not been able to do for centuries. This is what Selvi said last time, so I'm just quoting Selvi. And so this is the right time for freedom and liberation, right, Selvi? We have changed our format. Sorry. Yeah.
I was going to ask Fazana just a question. I think when you say that it's going to be there with us for another 2 years or more, and Kamini, you said we might have a third phase, we don't know. But it's possible that it's going to be with us for a long time. In this case, do you think that having a mindset of a new normal, living with COVID, would be able to confront the fear factor that Soraya was talking about, and also the kind of measures that we need to take the industry going? Or would a new normal kind of mindset help on that? Fazana.
Yes, Selvi. Yeah, I mean, when I said 2 years, I meant the economic recession. Not really COVID, but COVID is more an unknown, but the recession to recover at least would take 2 years, provided we also have a vaccine developed in between during that time. If not, it would take much longer. So we have to come to a new normal to cope, and I think that's what we are doing. Look at us on Wisdom Wednesdays online, and most of our meetings are online. Most of our products are brought online. Did we ever think about this even as short as a year ago? Our lifestyles have completely changed. My vehicles don't go out at all. I'm saving a lot on fuel costs, which I can use for charity. So I think, yes, Selvi, you're absolutely right. We have to adapt to the new normal. Yeah.
And also, if I could add something, I think, it's a very core principle we talk about on acceptance. The moment you accept something, it's easier to move forward, no?
Yeah, correct.
But also something I'm mindful about, and I raised this during our discussions, is about also sometimes we come from a place of privilege. Like most of us are working, our work can be done online. But what about those who don't have all this access to information, access to services, what about that aspect? And I don't know if anyone has any answers. I'm thinking actually Venerable Tenzin might have some answers around those.
Yes, I was thinking as well, because she's been very quiet, but please feel free to pop in anytime, Venerable Tenzin. Actually, your mic is muted. You have to unmute your mic. There you go.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to add something to that before I introduce what you're going to talk about, please feel free to add something.
Well, I mean, I'd like to, firstly, yes, I have all the answers.
That's good to hear.
Not. I was actually thinking about the fear factor that Soraya brought up and some of the more anxiety and the predominant emotions that we are having to navigate. I think we are going to have to look to the spiritual traditions from whatever tools that are available to deal with those, or whatever secular tools we have, because I think we are going to need every tool we have. And in terms of what is going to happen to the people that don't have enough food to eat in Sri Lanka, I think the ones who have a huge responsibility to make sure that the others do have. I think this is where the Kamini was talking about Buddha nature. We in Sri Lanka is very fearful about our Buddha nature. We are so afraid of our own goodness. But I think this is the time to embrace that we have tremendous capacity and act from that place of great compassion, and just make sure that we take on that responsibility fearlessly.
Thank you, Venerable Tenzin. Thank you. We have changed our format a little bit, and to help all of you viewers who watch us and join us, Venerable Tenzin is going to speak more on how religion as a whole, and Buddhism in particular, and yoga and Hinduism, some of the other religions can help us to find peace of mind in this time of strife. And so she will follow up whatever she has to say. These pearls of wisdom will be followed by a 2-minute meditation. So please stay with us, because I think it can only help us. I know it's helped all of us on the panel here. So on that note, Venerable Tenzin, it's all yours. Please speak out.
Thank you. I think there's been, everything I want to say is pretty much been covered by your wisdom anyway, but I will add a little bit. So in terms of post-COVID world, I think we need to first look at what have we learned from COVID. And as Selvi rightfully put, COVID in a very experiential and in-your-face way that has very forcefully has taught us about structures, systems, habits that we thought could never break, are fixed and permanent. They are broken now. So this is a very positive thing, because when we know that things can change, they are impermanent, that this is also our opportunity. To give an example, I think somebody might have mentioned this before, 10-12 months ago, it would have been inconceivable. I think Pasi said that she doesn't even drive very often. She works from home or works less. Similarly, in Australia, this is what has happened. 10 months ago, people would have rebelled if you said they have to work from home. Now, the very same people don't want to commute. So change is possible. The second lesson that we have learned from COVID is the fact that we are very much interconnected. So a bat in Wuhan, sick bat in Wuhan can bring the biggest nations to their knees, So we can't go along with the dominant view that we can completely just ignore, consume our way through the planet and expect no consequence of our actions. So if we are not disassociated, or if we are not numb, by now we should be quite disturbed about the fact that we can breed and we can kill millions of minks for what? To have a fabulous court. So this, what kind of a mindset that, and this has been going on for a very long time. So we don't respect other species. We don't take care of our environment. We don't take care of even our neighbors. We have lost that connection, heart connection with other beings and our surroundings. So we need to restore that. And the other thing is, if we think that sort of we are marching on to sort of a fabulous future, this is also very delusional. And everything, every challenge we are facing right now, we can bring it right back to our negative states of mind, like anger, desire, greed, and not knowing how to work, ignorance, as Buddhists put it. So what can we do in this, if that is the case? You know, how can we move forward? I think many of you touched on this. We have to firstly think if we really believe that we can co-create a world, whether we are an active agent in our own lives or we are a passive bystander, that the governments and the other people in power, it's their job to reshape the world, and the corporations will do that for us. This is also completely delusional and untrue. You know, we have just sort of, we are selling ourselves short if we don't understand our real power, that our consciousness has a tremendous effect in the world that we create. So we need to really understand that. And then we need to experiment. I'm inviting everyone who is listening to actually become an activist. I think SORAYA very strongly asked us all to be that. We have to play a role in our own lives and creating that post-COVID world. So, but this requires some presence, you know, because we have to really ask ourselves, are we actually exercising some choice in our lives, or are we just going along? We are a passive, you know, we are just reacting. So to actually become a proper activist, there's many ways of being an activist, but I'm actually looking to the religious, all religious traditions we gives us tremendous tools in that way, that as a group, singularly and as a group, we have meditation, we have other contemplative practices, we have satsangs, we have prayers. All of these is now have got empirical evidence that these things work. We can effect a change. It's not just our action, it's our thoughts and our consciousness. So a group of us come together, we think in a similar way. So we get together, and when we start using these tools. And that's how, and to develop our presence and awareness. Because if we are running after distractions, we don't want to see reality of what is happening in the world. We need the presence of mind to bring ourselves, wind our mind back to the center and actually make decisions based on concern for others and love for others and beneficial for ourselves. So on that note, let's do a little bit of meditation to finish off with. So please give me a time, because I'm pretty hopeless with keeping time. How much time have I got? 2 minutes? Okay. So please make yourself comfortable. And just make sure your back is straight, that there's a comfortable airflow. I know some people have said that they fall asleep during their meditations, which is also an indication then that you need rest. So when you come to listen to the Wisdom Women, make sure that you have had a rest and you're refreshed. So if you want to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. Might be more comfortable if you're a beginner. And just connect with your breath, just to settle your mind, just taking in everything we have discussed about our potential, about our capacity to change ourselves, to build new habits, to work with our emotions, whether they are positive or negative, and also to effect a change in the world. So we'll set a motivation that these couple of minutes that we spend, we are doing this for the benefit of ourselves and all living beings. We'll just breathe slowly, breathing in, breathing out. Just a couple of more times. And whatever comes up, if there's any emotions, any feelings that comes up, please welcome them. Like you're having a big party and everyone is invited. So whatever comes up, whether it's worry, anxiety, despair for the world, state of the world, or hope, joy, or love, we just embrace them all. And just sit with whatever dominant feeling that's showing up right now. Like a loving mother embracing a child. So when we start accepting whatever feelings, emotions we have, whether it's anger, joyful emotions or negative emotions, that is all part of us. That is what is reflected in the world. Once we accept this, we have much higher chance of transforming the world. So with that, we can dedicate whatever positive potential we created by coming together and then discussing ways of benefiting ourselves and others just for that. May this benefit beings who are suffering, free them from COVID and all other diseases. May they have compassion and wisdom in their hearts and think of only benefiting one another. Thank you. So when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Venerable Tenzin. That was beautiful. And it's a new way for us to end. Folks, all of you who are watching, we want you to be part of this whole experience, not only just transformation, but also, help yourselves with the meditation, with these words of wisdom. All the ladies here are well qualified to speak on these subjects, and I'm so happy that you join us every 2 weeks. The next Wisdom Wednesdays is going to be on the 25th of November at the same time, 7 p.m. Please join us and please pass the word around and ask all your friends to become part of Wisdom Wednesdays. Thank you. Thank you from all of us on the panel. And Venerable Tenzin, that again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. A good night, and we'll see you next on the 25th. Kamini, can you close the room and